Welcome back to the Ultraviolet Tide. We're super excited for another week of the episode, especially because our guest today is Falyn Katz, the Chief Executive Officer of Melanoma Canada. Falyn, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
We're excited to have this episode really as a bookend to May and Melanoma and Skin Cancer Awareness Month. Before we really dive in and get into the meat and potatoes of this episode, I'm going to give a brief introduction so that our audience can learn a little bit more about you. So like I said, Falyn Katz is the Chief Executive Officer of Melanoma Canada. Melanoma Canada advocates for and supports Canadians living with melanoma and skin cancer with helpful resources, education, support services, and more. Their mission is to be the united voice of the melanoma and skin cancer community, advocating for early detection, timely diagnosis, and effective treatment options. Their vision is to achieve zero melanoma and skin cancer-related deaths, which is definitely something we can get behind here at LUV. Falyn, can you tell us a little bit more about your background and Melanoma Canada's mission?
Sure. So I've been in the charitable sector for almost 15 years now, working for a variety of different national cancer and health charities. I joined Melanoma Canada 3 years ago in the executive director, now CEO role, leading the organization through probably what I think everyone can agree on is the most challenging time period we've had to face in the charitable sector, dealing with the pandemic, on top of everything else and all the struggles we normally go through. Um, but we're long past it now, and we thrived and continue to support our community despite the challenges that they faced. Which made accessing treatment and diagnostic services even more difficult. I have melanoma and skin cancers in my family, so this cause is very personal to me. And yeah, we've been working tirelessly since we were founded, but especially over the last 3 years to really support our community. Mental health challenges were very real for I think everybody, but especially for the cancer community during this time period. And so our support services were readily available virtually to help steer our patient community through the pandemic.
Yeah, that's awesome. No kidding when you say you joined at such an interesting time, because dealing with support for melanoma and skin cancer is certainly difficult as just being that, but throw in a global pandemic on top of that. And like you said, those support services are absolutely vital, to get people the mental health support that they need in such a challenging time. I'm sure was something that was also a challenge for Melanoma Canada to provide.
Definitely. We had to pivot quite a bit, but we have very generous sponsors and partners who allowed us to offer new programs and new services to continue to be able to be there for our community during the pandemic.
So you had a background in healthcare before joining Melanoma Canada. You were kind of already in the sector and understood. And then you said you had kind of family ties in the skin cancer, melanoma, um, within that kind of allowed it to be a personal connection. Do you feel comfortable divulging a little bit more on that and the personal aspect of it?
Sure. My mom has been through melanoma, and my grandparents have been through other types of skin cancer and non-melanoma skin cancers. And so for me, it was personal. Prior to joining Melanoma Canada, I worked for Prostate Cancer Canada, and prior to that for Canadian Breast Cancer Foundation. So two of the most common cancers, one in men, one in women, and now with skin cancer, it's the most common cancers, that type of cancer diagnosed, period. It felt very natural for me to come and join Melanoma Canada. My background was primarily in fundraising, so this is my first foray into also overseeing mission programs. But I really enjoy it because the two really go together. It's the funds raised go to support the mission, and so to be able to understand fully and appreciate fully where the money is going and really hear from the community about what they want and what they
Mhm.
need as patients, as caregivers, as healthcare professionals, is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And we've seen firsthand, especially with our work with the Melanoma Research Foundation here just outside of Washington, D.C. They're based in D.C., so we kind of have a firsthand look into the work that they're doing on Capitol Hill and throughout the U.S. and beyond. And we've seen the effect that this has had on people who are just trying to continue to live their life on their terms. And without organizations like this, they really wouldn't have a voice when it comes to big policy decisions or anything of that nature.
Yeah, it's always nice when you can see firsthand where the money is going, and really be able to understand the impact that your dollars are having.
For sure. And one thing I really wanted to dive into as well is we talk a lot about the US, but you guys are based in Canada, which I thought would be a really fun opportunity to talk a little bit about stats specific to Canada and what you guys are focused on. What are the key things that you're focused on? What are the key things that you're trying to make happen for the melanoma and skin cancer community right now?
For sure. So 1 in 3 cancers diagnosed in Canada is a type of skin cancer. And melanoma, which is the deadliest type of skin cancer, is the seventh most common cancer diagnosed. And unfortunately, it's on the rise. It's been rising over the last 25 years, and especially in young Canadians. Um, the good news is that skin cancers, including melanoma, are largely preventable because the majority are caused by UV rays from the sun or artificial sources like tanning beds. So our goal, I mean, you touched on it earlier when you talked about our mission, um, sun safety and prevention, and having those conversations and educating Canadians to try and reduce the incidence rates and avoid some of those unnecessary deaths really helps achieve our vision, right, of zero melanoma and skin cancer related deaths. So um, public education is really crucial for us. Um, most people aren't aware, and it's, I think it's an international stat, but skin cancers are more common than breast, prostate, lung, and colon cancers combined, which is pretty scary. And most people
Mhm.
think, oh, it's just something that can be, taken off in the dermatologist's office, and it's not something I have to worry about long term. It's not fatal. Well, 3 Canadians are dying every day of melanoma, and like largely preventable deaths,
Right.
given, like I said, the majority caused by UV exposure. So really, we work on a daily basis to educate, to inform, and to talk about the importance of prevention and early detection, but also to support, the patient and caregiver community who are battling, not just you know an easy thing to go through, what people misconstrue as, oh, it's just skin cancer, and so that sometimes makes it psychologically even harder, right, because nobody
Right.
understands what you're going, oh, it's not a big deal, but stage
Right.
4 melanoma is,
A
you
big
know
deal.
it's a big deal. It's a very big
Yeah.
deal.
Right.
So really, helping our community get through those type of things is what we're here for.
Yeah, you're totally right. We hear that all the time. It's just skin cancer. Well, it's not just skin cancer. And you also mentioned tanning beds, and Snigdha and I, we just talked about tanning beds. Snigdha, do you want to dive a little bit more into that?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I launched like a social media attack on tanning beds recently. I made a TikTok that got a lot of heat and I safe to say it went viral. Lots of interesting comments that I come across on that TikTok, and I'm like, do people really not understand that it's just basic precaution? Like it's better safe than sorry type of situation. And we touched on kind of the history of a tanning bed, where they started, the original use of them, and then how they've kind of evolved from a medicinal use that was used to help people with certain skin conditions, to help even out their skin tone and stuff like that, under the supervision of a doctor, of course. And then from there, it's kind of transitioned into a cosmetic use. Um,
hmm
and we also touched on kind of the cultural implications of how, in the East, and this isn't like a stereotype, this is just what I've observed as an Indian American, is that we are usually tanner and we want to be on the lighter side. Whereas here in the West, if you're paler, you want to be more tan. And I'm just sitting here in the middle, like, why can't we be ever happy with how we are? Like, let's
Wouldn't
just
that be nice?
embrace,
I know.
yeah, embrace the skin that we're in. Like, how does it? I just don't understand. And I feel like tanning beds are just, they're so voluntary, and it's just one decision where, you say, well, I'm gonna go spray tan, or I'm gonna go use a self tanning lotion instead, and it's so easy, so preventative.
I mean, we say there is no safe tan, period. Um, and we talk about tanning. Stereotypically, it's been considered it's sexy, right, to have a tan, uh, but it's actually deadly. So, I think we have to educate and continue to talk to Canadians, talk to Americans, talk to everybody around the world about, the dangers of tanning beds. They're a class 1 carcinogen. They're comparable to tobacco, but people don't understand that. And so I think it's about continuing to talk about it. We were very instrumental several years ago about increasing the age limit for tanning beds and making sure that youth can't access them. And I think that's something we need to continue to chat about. We're hoping in the coming months and years to have conversations with national fitness clubs, because they're readily available there. And so these fitness chains are talking about and preaching health, but really they
Right.
offer a service, and sometimes they even profit off a service because they charge extra for those memberships, right, to use the tanning beds. They're killing people. Um, you don't see the gym selling cigarettes. They don't sell
Right.
alcohol. It's a
Hmm.
comparable product. So really, it's been one of our goals for a while, but we haven't wanted to kick fitness clubs while they're down. A lot of them, suffered during the pandemic and had to close,
Yep.
and so we put that on pause for a little bit. But it's definitely on our radar as something that needs to be tackled, um, because yeah, it's just wrong and shouldn't be in their service offerings at all.
Oh, we absolutely agree. And it's something that we've had conversations about before that I find really interesting, that tanning beds were really marketed as self-care, which is why it is in those sports clubs and in those gyms and everything, because it was seen as self-care, because you go in and you feel better and you feel ready to take on your day and you have a tan and your mental health is boosted. But people are finally, and it's much like cigarettes, and you kind of made the comparison there, that people were smoking cigarettes but they didn't know the health implications, and then we figured it out, and then you saw a huge change. And we're hoping that the same happens for tanning beds. Now the research is out, let's see that drastic change. We're ready for it, let's go.
Yeah, exactly.
And another thing, too, that I found really fascinating is through our conversations with businesses across Canada and kind of talking about what their customers and what they're seeing when it comes to the thoughts on sun protective apparel and tanning and everything. And I had a really fascinating conversation with a business owner in Canada who mentioned how a lot of people don't think of Canada and think of sun protection being necessary, because you're like, oh, you're so far north and yada, yada, yada. And she's like, I just want to shake them because that's not how it works. She said she gets comments like that all the time. Have you seen that as well?
Yes and no. I mean, we deal predominantly with the Canadian marketplace, and so really everybody here is thinking, I just need sun protection in the spring and summer and not the winter and fall. And so a lot of the education that we do is around sun safety year round,
Mhm.
and making it a habit similar to how you would brush your teeth, and put on a seatbelt before you get in a car, right? You wouldn't get in a car without a seatbelt. You wouldn't leave your house in the morning without brushing your teeth. Don't leave your house without putting on sunscreen.
Mhm.
Um, and so, the sun reflects off of ice and snow, just as it reflects off of water. And so it can be every bit as dangerous in the winter as it is in the summer. And so we run a campaign in the winter called, we call it the 7 Summit Snowshoe Challenge for skin cancer. And so it's a national challenge. And so Canadians from across the country snowshoe the distance equal to the 7 tallest summits in the world to raise awareness for the importance of winter sun safety. And we do a lot of education that way, and we're out in the marketplace and in the media talking about it. And it has gotten quite a lot of attention. Especially during the pandemic, because snowshoeing was a safe sport to do. During
Right.
the pandemic, you could do it anywhere in your own backyard on trails all around the country. So, but yeah, it is a common misnomer that, you know, the further north you are or the colder your climate, you don't have to worry about it as much. But our summers are really, really hot, and the ozone layer is getting thinner everywhere, and so more UV is coming through. And we've got these fun. I don't know if you can see my wrist, but we've got these fun little bracelets, and they're UV bracelets that change color. So they're
Yes.
clear and they turn to red when the UV is strong, as a reminder to put on sunscreen and cover up and seek shade where you can. And so I don't know if it's not now, but even sometimes by the window, right? We
Right.
work inside by windows. If the blinds are open and the sun is coming through, the windows don't fully eliminate the UV. And so it tells you, hey, you know, I put on sunscreen every morning with my moisturizer. And, you know, fine, I may be guilty of not reapplying it every 2 hours when I'm inside, but definitely when I'm outside, you know,
Yeah.
it's important to remember to reapply. And, ideally cover up if you can, with, UPF protective apparel,
Mhm.
or with, fabric you can't see through. And if you can get in the shade and do your activities in the shade or outside of peak UV hours, which, I mean, in Canada it's 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., do those. We've got our walk coming up next weekend, next Sunday. And so what we've done is we changed our walk time. Normally every charity walk is usually in the morning, and it's like, oh, opening ceremonies are like 8 or 9 a.m. Well,
Mhm.
that means you end up walking during peak UV hours.
Right.
So we've changed our walk to be outside of peak UV hours and encouraged people to walk between 3 and 5 p.m. This year to really practice what we preach.
Yeah, you are so right about that. I didn't even consider the fact that normally when you're doing those kinds of walks, it is during peak hours. That's a very good point. Yeah, so it's smart to do things and, use the opportunity as also a reminder of which hours, to seek shade and to be out of the sun. But that's just one of the many really fun campaigns you guys have. You guys also have the Mole-mobile that I want to talk about as well. Can you dive into that for our audience?
Sure. The Mole-mobile is Canada's first mobile skin cancer screening unit. The idea was inspired by what other organizations in the US and in Australia are doing. It's essentially a trailer that we've retrofitted into a dermatology office, and it will go across Ontario this year and across Canada over the next 5 years. And really, what it's designed to do is bring skin cancer screening to remote, Indigenous, and underserved communities, as well as areas that have a long wait time to see a dermatologist. The average wait time in a major city in Canada can exceed 6 months, and we
Mhm.
have a shortage across all healthcare professionals these days, but we've always had a shortage of dermatologists. There's only 215 in Ontario and only 700 across Canada.
Wow.
That's for a population of 30 million. And so that makes for long waiting periods. Even if you live in a major city where obviously the practice, most practice is concentrated. So if you live in a rural community, you likely have to drive a really long way to get screened for skin cancer. The other issue we have, of course, is that the dermatologists are not necessarily um, compensated, because we have a different healthcare system to what you guys have in the U.S. and healthcare is funded, and we're very fortunate for that. Don't get me wrong; it's we are certainly very lucky. Um, but dermatologists have to practice cosmetic procedures in order to take home a living wage. Cost of living in major cities in Canada is incredibly expensive. Cost of Toronto and of living in Toronto compares to the cost of living, I think, in New York these days. So they don't have a lot of time to diagnose skin cancer. And so, if you've got a molar lesion that's concerning, and you've got to wait, 5, 6, 7, 8 months, that causes a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress. And so we wanted to bring skin cancer screenings to Canadians. And so that's what this mobile is designed to do.
I love it so much. We had on Don Hunt, the president of OnSpot Dermatology, talking about how this is the future of skin checks because you are removing a barrier to access that otherwise might not be able to be removed. And you're making it so easy for people to have access to that and solving the problem of those wait times that you said. If you have a concerning mole, but you have to wait 6 to 8 months, well, that mole is changing that entire time if it's a spot of concern.
Exactly.
I think that's awesome. And then you mentioned Strides for Melanoma, but you also have a pickleball tournament as well that's coming up.
Yeah, that's a new one. So we're introducing that in Montreal and Toronto. We're hoping to turn it into a national series and bring the tournament across the country. It'll be a celebrity pickleball tournament called Smash Out Skin Cancer. It'll be in August in Montreal and September in Toronto. And so teams of two can register online and fundraise. Our top fundraisers will get a chance to play a bonus round against a team of celebrities. Don't ask me who yet. I don't know, but we'll be bringing them in from LA. They're not pro pickleball players, they're just fun people. So it's a unique experience for our participants. But really, it's also to shine a light on the importance of practicing sun safety when you play pickleball. A lot of the time, especially in the summer, it's played outside. And there's no shade or cover around, similar to tennis. And so really we want to educate pickleball players, as the sport is the fastest growing sport in North America, to cover up and to apply their sunscreen when they're out there playing. Um, definitely a need for those athletes.
I love it because it was so funny. We were at a market a couple of weeks ago and we have our all-star tennis dress. And someone came up to us and they're like, you really need to change the name. And I was like, oh no, like, what are we doing wrong? She's like, it should be called the pickleball dress. And I was like, oh my gosh, pickleball is growing so rapidly. And I love that you guys are kind of going on that and using the opportunity to promote and use something that's really trendy right now. But maybe we have to call our all-star tennis dress the pickleball dress now. Maybe that's the way things are going.
Yeah, or tennis slash pickleball. You gotta
There
gotta
you
get them
go.
both in there.
There you go. Yes, wear it anytime you're outside playing golf, pickleball, tennis, whatever it may be. But I think you guys offer so many exciting campaigns to be a part of. And if people are listening and they really want to get involved, what is the easiest way for them to do that?
melanomacanada.ca is our website. It has links to all of our different events and campaigns, and also a lot of educational information, both on prevention as well as our support services for patients. So you can visit melanomacanada.ca and check us out.
Absolutely. And what I always say is we'll put it in the show notes so people can find you guys super easily and connect. But the last question I have to ask, because we are closing out May, and we always like to remind that this is just an awareness month to continue what you learn throughout the entire year. So as we are closing out May, what is one thing people should remember all the time, not just this month, about sun safety and early detection in skin cancer?
Yeah, so like I said earlier, sun safety is a year-round concern. We like to talk about the 3 ways to block the rays because it keeps it simple. So first, sunscreen, apply it every day, reapply it every 2 hours or more often if you're swimming or sweating. Make sure you pick one that's offers UVA and UVB protection, broad spectrum, ideally SPF 30 plus. Second way, cover up. Of course, UPF apparel is ideal, but if not, a thick woven fabric. Remember, sunglasses and a hat as well, ideally. Something that's broad brim would
Mm-hmm.
be great. And then seek shade and do your activities outside of peak UV hours. So those are our 3 ways to block the rays. And as far as early detection, if you have a molar lesion of concern, look for those ABCDEs, which are the identifiers for melanoma, so the asymmetry that your molar lesion is different on either side. So if you fold it in half, it's not perfect. B for border. So if it's a hazy, fuzzy border, jagged. C, color. If you see multiple colors, some blacks, some browns, some reds, some purples, or if it changes color. D for diameter, larger than the size of a pencil eraser, which is 6 millimeters. Or E, evolution, something that just changes over time. Talk to your doctor or dermatologist. It's really important.
Mm-hmm. Those are all fantastic reminders. And we think people are going to listen to this, hopefully are sparking change, are listening, are taking advantage of this opportunity to learn. And you gave us our website. You guys also have a social media channel that people can follow as well, correct?
We do. Just at Melanoma Canada on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Follow us. Ask us questions. We're here to support our community.
Yep, and we will link all that in the show notes so people can find you guys. But Falyn, thank you so much for your time and for teaching us a little bit more about sun safety and the work that Melanoma Canada is doing.
Of course, thank you for having me, and thank you for what you guys are doing.